Reading with your kids.
Hola, niho, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni maliwanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted and so very honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is coming to us from Amsterdam and the Netherlands. Her name is Anieka Lamers, and she is here to celebrate her innovative app. It's called PeekABond. Before we invite Anieka into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by the adventures of Rosie Posey Papillon, a beautiful series of books written by Dr. Diana Rangavis. Rosie Posey Papillon is brave, smart, and oh so friendly. Papillon is her last name, and in French it means butterfly. The Rosie Posey series was created with young readers in mind to teach them values, create and plant the seeds of future leaders and great thinkers of tomorrow. You can find out more about this wonderful picture book series by visiting DianaRangavis.com. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by My Home, the powerful and touching and thought-provoking picture book by Heather Fontaine-Youngs. Heather Fontaine-Youngs has been a pre-K teacher for almost 2 decades, teaching kids in the South Bronx. She's taught students about homes and the different types of homes all around us. She wants all of her students and children everywhere to feel included and heard about all topics. There's a need for a story that could help introduce kids to the topic of homelessness. Heather's hope is that this story will not only allow students to feel included, but to help start a new conversation around homes for our youngest and most precious learners. You can find your copy of My Home by Heather Fontaine-Youngs at Amazon. Join us right now from Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Our guest is here today to celebrate a brand new app that I think families are going to love, especially families that are spread apart across the country or across the globe. Please welcome to the show the founder of PeekABond, Anieka Lamers. Hey, Anieka, how are you?
Hey, Jet. I'm good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I can't wait for you to tell us all about PeekABond. This seems like a really cool app.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so PeekABond is really an app to help global families build bonds with young children at a distance. The reason I founded it is because I have a little one in my family all the way in Australia. I live in Europe. And actually, my parents, they have children on 3 different continents. So that's why I was inspired to create something to help families bridge the distances, not just across borders, but even during pandemic times as well, on the other side of the city, and having a creative way to be in touch. So basically what it does, it's an app. You can download it in the app stores, and it gives you content suggestions that are playful and gamified, and also based on child development science. So we give all sorts of play suggestions. Can be reading a story or singing a song or doing a magic trick, or telling about your family story, and you can record yourself as a reader or a creator. Send a video to your child, and your child can respond to it. So they can actually also record the response of the child whilst watching the video that was sent by the sender. And this way you can record and save all those videos in one spot, which is what we call a love bank, where all the memories are stored safely, and the children can just watch them when they're in the right mood and watch them over and over again. It'll become a loving family memory bank, if you will. So, that's the idea of PeekABond, and I'm excited to share more about it.
Yeah, well, this seems, a couple of things have really caught my attention. Number one, as somebody who's been making a living as a magician traveling around the country doing magic shows in schools, I want to learn all about that magic trick that families can do.
Yeah.
But also, you're talking about that. I think you called it a love bank.
Yes, I did.
And I remember being a kid and looking through the old black and white, because they didn't invent color back then when I was young, 100 years ago. But those old black and white pictures of family members that I might have seen when I was a baby once or twice, but had passed away. Or I know I had an uncle in another state, and I would just look at those still pictures for hours as a kid and imagine things, and how much more fun that would have been if these images came alive, if I actually didn't only have a picture of me sitting on my grandfather's lap, but actually could hear his voice and hear him talk to me.
Yeah, that is what we hear from our users as well. And there's actually a lot of value also in knowing where you come from and knowing your roots. It's almost like built into our human nature that we want to know our family stories, and they do get lost over time also because, the older people are passing away, and it's very important to save the stories and save where they are coming from. There's actually a couple of interesting statistics that I wanted to share. So it turns out that actually 40% of grandparents regularly feel lonely, and also 40% of young children are estimated to not have secure attachments, which are crucial for success later in life. And we believe that an app like PeekABond can really help to build those social emotional bonds between children and grandparents at a distance, but also in some cases, right, parents are at a distance as well. You can imagine children of divorced families or children whose parents are in the military. My dad, when I was young, also separated from my mom, and I remember in my childhood missing him a lot. So I think an app like this could really help those families out there as well to get an attachment, even though you cannot be physically together all the time.
Yeah. This would have been so much fun for me when my kids 20, 25 years ago, when I'd be on the road. And even before the days of the cell phone, I have a memory of standing in a hallway in a hotel reading a storybook to my kids, because I wanted to have that connection to them, and that was the only way. We didn't have cell phones, we didn't have Zoom, and it was pop the quarters in the cell phone.
Oh, really?
And just read the storybook there, and getting all sorts of strange looks, but I didn't care because I was talking with my kids.
And do you always read your own stories from a book, or do you come up with your own stories? I'm curious.
I would do both. We would there were definitely some stories that my kids loved to hear over and over again. Clown of God by Tommy DePaulo was one of our favorites. And my kids knew that I have a speech impediment, and when I'm especially tired, I have a hard time with words beginning with the letter F. And so they would always ask me to read One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish, and they did it just because they knew I would be stumbling and stuttering, and they thought it was very funny.
That's very sneaky.
But I also, we did a lot of family history, telling my kids about my dad who had passed, about my grandmother, who was an amazing character, and some of the crazy stories from the crazy neighborhood I grew up in. Yeah, I can imagine that really helps to bring perspective in their lives. And what you mentioned with being on the road a lot as a parent, not just being on the road, but even, living away from children. In the US, I think over half of the grandparents live more than 200 miles away from at least one grandchild. So the distances are huge, as you know, and it really helps to bring families closer if you have those shared stories. Yeah. My son and his wife just moved to Florida. So if sometime in the near future we're blessed with grandkids, they'll be 2,000 miles away from us.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You can use the PeekABond app to share your stories and videos. Yeah.
So devil's advocate. We have Instagram, we have Facebook, and we have Zoom. Why can't families just use those things?
Great question, and I get that asked a lot. And what makes us different to platforms such as FaceTime or WhatsApp, which is what most people use to connect remotely with family, it is that we have those content suggestions. So we really mapped out the entire child development journey from, let's say, 0 to 6 years old. And we know exactly what type of milestones children go through at certain stages of their development. And we give all sorts of content suggestions, be it stories or, like those magic tricks that I said, that will help the children develop that particular milestone that they are going through then. So you as a grandparent don't have to think, oh, what am I going to come up with now when we are having a call? You have already the suggestion and you can just easily personalize it for your grandchild at a distance. So that makes it much easier for people, and it also gives sort of a hook in a shared activity that you can do together.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. And I'm imagining that security is an issue when we're talking about families and sharing family history.
Yeah, it is. Security is of uttermost importance, especially when it comes to little ones. So privacy and security is actually one of our key USPs, because what makes us also different from Facebook and Instagram, for example, is that we will never sell the data that our users have to external parties. Our business model will be in the future to have a subscription business model. For now, since we are very early stage, we're still building the company and testing a lot. It's still for free for people to use. But we believe that, the data, especially pictures and videos of children, should be kept very safe and should belong to them and not to advertisers, so to say. So that's why, we believe that that business model of Facebook, let's say, and other social media are not suitable for young children, and also, the addictive character of the way social media is set up is also not suitable for young children. And another thing that I wanted to mention with respect to security is that as a parent, you control the family circle of your child, and you know who will be invited into the family circle. And if you want full control, you can obviously co-watch all the videos with your grandchild, or with your child, I mean. So parents are really in control who is able to send videos to their children. So it won't be, possible for children to link to people that the parents don't know.
Yeah, so important. And you mentioned that the videos and the pictures that you upload to PeekABond are yours. One of the things that most people don't realize, I think, is that all that word salad that you kind of click when you join Instagram and Facebook, that no one ever reads because there's just too many words there. You are basically agreeing that anything that you upload to Facebook, to Instagram, becomes theirs, and they can use it however they want.
Yes, correct. That is true.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever saw the documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma.
Oh, boy.
But it's a very interesting and also a bit of a creepy documentary. But I recommend all parents and grandparents, for that matter, to check it out, because it's really important to be cognizant of what's happening with your data. And if you're not paying for it, then actually you are the product.
Yep. Yes. So at PeekABond, there's not going to be some mysterious AI going through your history and thinking, Joe hasn't been on lately. Let me send him a prompt so that he'll go on and post something, and then we can sell advertisement to him.
So there's two things that you're saying there. One is the use of artificial intelligence to give intelligent content suggestions to someone and to improve the experience of that user. And for example, a party like Netflix or Spotify is also doing that in order to make suggestions in terms of what music or what movies you like, in order to improve the experience for the users, right? So I think that's fine. Like that type of artificial intelligence is, I guess, not evil. And then the second part where you said, in order to maximize advertising income, because we can build the profiles of users and push our products, kind of like shove them down their throat. That's a different kind of artificial intelligence, and that's applying it really to maximize shareholders' profit. And that's not what we're about at PeekABond. So we're really an impact company, trying to impact the lives of humans and families out there in a positive way, not maximizing shareholder profit.
Yeah. One of the things that we've celebrated here on the podcast is the idea of intergenerational relationships and friendships and how important that is. And one of the things that I've noticed in my travels, my beautiful wife is originally from Puerto Rico, and I've noticed in a lot of Latin American countries that there's a lot more intergenerational relationships, a lot more intergenerational friendships. And you can very often will go to a concert and there'll be grandparents with their grandkids and teenagers that will be seen with their grandparents and parents at something, which doesn't happen here in the States that much. And I think that that's something that we're really missing here in the States and other parts of the world. So I'm really happy that PeekABond is working to change that.
Yeah, that's correct. Research actually shows that the most important mitigant to make sure that ageism is reduced, so the discrimination of people with different ages, is if you have warm relationships within your own circle with people of different ages. In other words, if a grandchild has a warm relationship with their own grandparents, they're less likely to be ageism, they're less likely to be ageist when they grow older. So that's why those relationships are important. And I think the same holds for different cultures. Like you mentioned, your wife, who's from Puerto Rico, your kids have been exposed to different cultures, I guess, at a very young age, which is very important. And in order to reduce racism or discrimination of other cultures as well.
Yeah. I remember this very funny moment. My beautiful wife and I were walking down the street, and we passed a group of teenagers who didn't see us at all. And I turned to my wife and I said, "See, I really am a magician. We were invisible. Those kids didn't see us at all. We bumped into them and they still didn't see us."
Yeah. Well, that could have to do with the fact that, teenagers are, living in their own world. If I look at myself as a teenager, I was definitely not my mind was not occupied with people your and my age back then, but more with other teenagers, right? So, yeah.
Tell me, Anieka, what was the inspiration for you to come up with this? Was it you were sleeping in the middle of the night, you had this idea, and I got to do this?
Yeah. A couple of things. So I used to work as a venture capital investor, and I saw a lot of children's apps, mobile apps in the education space and healthcare space. And I always had this itch where I thought, I want to be a founder myself, but I never really had that one idea where I thought that's good enough. And then, of course, my sister, who lives in Australia, who's also my best friend, she had a baby girl, and I never had, any sort of connection to young babies, because I felt I'm a child myself, and babies, they're just crying and pooping all the time, not really that much engagement. Until she came to the Netherlands with her baby, and she had like a 20-hour flight from Melbourne to Amsterdam, and she was so done with it, and she's like, hold the baby, and she pushed her in my arms. And for me, that was like lightning struck. It was like a really beautiful transformational moment, and all I could think was, my life doesn't matter. What I want is for this little one to be safe, happy, loved, and feel my warmth, even though I cannot be there for her physically all the time. I want to be there for her emotionally and mentally. And I just experienced how difficult it is to build up a meaningful bond with a little one when you're so far apart. And I found out that a lot of my friends, I happen to have a lot of expat friends because I lived abroad a lot. They are in the stage of getting their first children. And also I saw how difficult it was for them to bridge several cultures and, balancing, their ambitions and dreams with maybe moving back home to have support from grandparents. And I just thought, wow, this is just a really important topic and nobody's really having a solution for it. So you know what? I'm going to build it myself. That was my light bulb moment, I guess.
That's amazing. So the app, we can get it at the App Store. So the first thing is parents download it to their device.
Yes, correct.
And where do they go from there?
So there's a few steps. So one, you download it from the App Store. You can create an account, or you can actually also skip that process. But most importantly, you can add the age of your child that you want to have a bond with, because that will drive the content suggestions, which are appropriate for that age of your child. So you don't have to give actually the specific date of birth, but, approximately, let's say July 2020, this child was born. It'll give content suggestions for children who are 2-3 years old to help you get inspired. And then you can already start creating your first videos. So we're really helping our users step by step how to do that. And you can share it with a profile, with a platform that you're already using. So it can be WhatsApp, or you can also share it through email, or whatever messenger that you like to share it with. And with that message, you can also share an invite to the app. You don't have to do that, but you can. And if the person on the other side accepts it, you'll be in a so-called family circle. And there you can share those messages and save them all in one spot safely. If you don't want to be in a circle, but you just want to share the messages through WhatsApp, that's also fine. Like, we don't force people to download the app. We enable an easier experience if they do it, but they don't have to do it that way.
Yeah.
And then, let's say you as a future grandparent, because you don't have grandkids yet, but would send a video to your son or daughter to show to your grandchildren. They can actually record the response of your grandchild and send a video back. And that's where the ping pong effect starts happening, right? Where you can really have that interactivity between child and family at a distance.
Yeah. So you mentioned magic tricks. What's some of the content that PeekABond would suggest I create for a 2-year-old?
A 2-year-old, yeah. So that's about the age my little niece has in Australia. And it's really, it varies a lot. It can start very simple with, one that I like a lot, which I give a lot as an example, is putting a spoon on your nose. So hanging a tablespoon on your nose and just sending that to the 2-year-old. I did that for my little niece and she loves it. She laughed out loud when it fell off my nose, and it's just something that they think is fascinating. Mm-hmm. For a 2-year-old, that's where it stops. Like if it's a 4, maybe a 6-year-old, you can actually ask them to also put a spoon on their nose and send the video back to you, right? To do the same thing. So we'll also prompt our users, okay, a 2-year-old you can expect this and this from a 2-year-old, and you can expect a 4-year-old to actually do it themselves as well. So with 2-year-olds, they typically love dancing, love moving. So a little song could be something that they really like. Some little riddles poems is something that young children really like. And of course, story reading is already something that they like. Their attention span is a bit shorter with the 2-year-olds than it is for, let's say, 4-year-old. So we recommend to keep the stories very short, like maybe 2-3 minutes max. And we give all sorts of tips to, make it very engaging.
Yeah. Well, this sounds really, really fun. I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about PeekABond before they go to the App Store. Is there a website?
Yeah, it's PeekABond.com. So PeekABond, like you spell peekaboo, but it ends with bond because we're about family bonding.
Wonderful. We've had a really, really fun time speaking with the founder of PeekABond, a really fun app that's available on the App Store. And we've been speaking with our guest, Anieka Lamers. Anieka, thank you so much for being with us.
Great, Jet. Thanks for having me, and stay playful.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Jasmine Simon, the star of the Netflix series Raising Dion. She'll be here to celebrate her beautiful debut picture book. It's called Most Perfect You, and this is a most perfect and inspiring and really fun interview. You do not want to miss it. Jasmine is absolutely delightful. That's the next episode of the podcast. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so very, very wonderful. Of course, we're going to start by thanking our guest, Anieka Lamers. Please be sure to visit the App Store and check out PeekABond. Sounds like a really, really fun app. Also want to thank our sponsors, Heather Fontaine-Youngs. Please check out her book, My Home. And, of course, Rosie Posey Papillon, the great picture book series by Dr. Diana Rangaris. I want to thank my team, Rory Grady, Fatima Khan, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.